Today's chat is brought to you by, well, all of your support. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through Podbean's crowdfunding, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a patron of the FFC, please be sure to visit our website and click on the support link. Even a single dollar helps, and for those of you who are already patrons, thank you again for your generosity. You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search, focus that fire. And so we come together. Join us. Join the discussion. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat. Welcome back for episode 161 of Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on March 15th over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, I want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Our topic for tonight's episode is going to be a look at the letters from a Renegade lore book. But first, let's run through a quick introduction of those on the show for tonight. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86. Next up, we have our own master social media, the one and only Green-Eyed Music Lover. Green, I hope you're doing well. How's the week treated you so far?
It's good. I've got Thorn, and I'm using it, and I don't care if you don't like it, dredging haters, because I am here to stay.
I forgive you.
Oh, in other news, I'm also moved into my house, and things are going well there in the real life, so yeah, it's been good. It's been a good week.
That's always good. You're not you have power. That's good.
Yes, and hot water.
Yeah, that's even better. Even better.
You know, I'm going to brag on my wife because she deserves all the bragging on. We moved. We got the house on like February 28th, and then moved in about a week later. But we had done work that weekend after the 28th, which I think was a Friday or a Thursday or whatnot. We did work that weekend and tore out carpet and painted and all that stuff, and then we moved in the weekend afterwards. Well, we accidentally clogged up our sensor on our water heater, the sensor that lets the water heater know that there aren't any flammable substances.
Oh, no.
So the water heater automatically shut off because we clogged it with paint, and we didn't know about it for a week. We had hot water for a week, surprisingly. Now, granted, we weren't here the majority of that week, but my wife was super clever, and thanks to a man named Frank, if you ever listen to this podcast, thank you very much. You saved our butts for a few days while we were waiting for the part to come in, because he figured out a way to trick the water heater into thinking that the sensor was working by putting the two, essentially the prongs that go into the sensor into a bowl full of water, closing the circuit and letting the water heater work. This was a whole thing for a few days. So thank you, Frank, wherever you are. You are my hero.
Acceptable. Completely acceptable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. And just real quick, I did want to give a big shout out to everyone who's kind of weighed in on the listing of all the light bearers that I've been putting together. For those of you who are interested, I'll include a link in the show notes over on the Lore Network website. But it's basically, I think we have about 170 names so far.
It's a ton of work that you've done on that, by the way.
Well, and I've been told that a lot of, I got a message today, actually. It was like, this is something that I need. I didn't even know I need. I was like, awesome. I mean, and that's really what I was looking at stuff, and I was seeing all this stuff, and I couldn't keep track of Ghost. Actually, that was the straw that broke the camel's back as far as me putting together this, was I got tired of trying to remember which Ghost went where. And so I started putting together, and right now I have all the light bearers that we know of from the lore. I have their classification, if they're alive or dead or unknown, any titles, the ghosts that they have with them, if we know their name and gender designation, race, gender, affiliations. So like if they're listed as, let's do Shadows of Yore, for instance, is going to be one that we'll talk about tonight. And then I also threw in a little bit of extra notes as well. So if you guys could, and I just got done linking all of this back to confirmation on Ishtar, which big shout out to Uni also on that, because there's a very specific syntax that goes along with Ishtar search parameters. And I finally got Uni to kind of lift the veil a little bit, and I figured out how to chain together some stuff to make the search parameters a little bit nicer for this particular thing. So definitely give it a gander if you're at all interested in it. And if you see something on there that's incorrect, the link that that I've been sharing, you have the right to comment on it. So definitely let me know. Or if there's something on here or something that's not on here that you're like, hey, it would be really nice to know X, put a comment on there, and I can try to backfill that. But yeah, so really big thanks to, gosh, man, it's probably a good couple dozen people who have chipped in both through Reddit, Ishtar's Commons, which is their forum over there, and then the Discord server ourselves. But I mean, seriously, big thank you, because you guys are helping make that even better than what I was hoping for. I am also putting together a similar document for all the codes, which will not be applicable really this week, but you'll start kind of picking up on them with the book that we're going to be talking about next week, which is The Stolen Intelligence. I've started archiving the values and the acronyms that we've seen within game, the call signs of the hidden and the VIP listings of the hidden, just in case we start getting more of those in the future. That way we have a base to kind of work with. So I'll probably share that once it kind of gets, it's really rough right now, but once it gets a little bit more polished, I might share that as well with everyone. But again, just really big thank you for everyone who kind of weighed in on different aspects and, and fact checked me. I really appreciate that. But Green, did we have a question for this one?
No. With the move and everything happening, I have blanked on it 2 weeks in a row now, so I am sorry to the community on that front. But there will be a question for stolen intelligences, because that's just too good of a topic to totally blank out about.
Well, and stolen intelligence has that one's going to be a fun one. That one's going to be Tangent City. Oh, real quick. The whole list of light bearers also was Doom for Zombies' fault, because he made a comment about it. So that plus my frustration at not being able to connect things kind of was the push over the edge. But so yeah, sorry about that, Doom. He's in chat right now giving me grief about it. But yes, Doom was a big part of what kind of started me down the insanity there. All right, so let's run through let's run through our intro notes real quick, and then we'll get right into it. In our last episode of Focus Fire Chat, we discussed a general exploration of the reef. If you enjoy the show, please be sure to rate and, if you can, leave us a written review on iTunes or comment on the episodes on Podbean or whichever podcasting app you use to enjoy podcasts. Reviews are extremely helpful, as they not only let us know what we can do better, but help continue to expand the FFC family, which allows more and more perspectives to be heard. To those of you who have already taken the time to leave us a review, thank you. As many of you already know, Focus Fire Chat is a gathering place where the intent is to offer a week-long, in-depth view of a particular subject from within game lore, with a special focus on the Destiny universe. This chat begins every Tuesday morning and runs until the following Tuesday, with topics decided by the group via a poll that begins every Friday and ends on the Tuesday morning of the new chat. Every Friday, at around 10 p.m. Central, we get together to stream a high-level summary of the previous week's chat for those who are unable to participate. If you're a fan of lore in all its various forms, be sure to also check out thelorenetwork.com, where you can find a wide variety of some amazing content that covers a number of different titles and mediums. This will also be the new home for the Focus Fire Chat episode note archives and articles going forward. Our next chat is going to be a discussion on the Stolen Intelligence lore book. However, as always, please be sure to weigh in on the poll this weekend to let us know which topic you want to discuss after that. Links to that poll can be found on either Twitter @FocusFireChat or within our Discord server. With all this being said, here's Green with a high-level summary of tonight's topic.
We must each walk our own path, find our own way, every step forward unique to the lives we've led, the choices we've made. Yet we're connected, all of us, by choice, by consequence, by random luck, and those steps taken and decisions made. Our individual lives shaped by the person we were, the person we are, the person we claim to be, the person we hope to be. The stages of our singular existence, or so we tell ourselves, lost as we are in our own stories. In truth, there is no I in singular existence. Never has been, never will be. You, me, your fire team and friends, your allies and enemies, all lives move with, collide with, other lives, for better or worse, to form the whole of a lifetime. Letters from a Renegade gives us insight into the growth of a character that until D2 is more myth than man. The man with the golden gun, the hero of Dwindler's Ridge, the hunter with many names, Shin Melfer. His character development within this book paints him as having more depth than the White Knight that we knew in D1, instead showing that his own path treads the line of what some would consider light and dark. Why do we care about him? Because, Guardians, his story directly impacts yours.
Before we jump into the information and thoughts the community had about the letters, however, let's have a quick chat about this week's Lost Lore. And this week for the Lost Lore, we have something that's been kind of creating a schism, if you will, in the community. And it's not a bad schism necessarily. It's a choice that we have been. Well, it's a choice of allegiance, if you will. And I think that this week I wanted to actually kind of dedicate the Lost Lore segment to talking about that particular allegiance quest, because it is actually really relevant to Letters from a Renegade. And there's actually quite a bit of relevance to a lot of these different pieces. Next week, it's going to be relevant, which I'll probably explain more next week why it's relevant. But Green, I'm going to actually let you go first, and just I know which one you chose, but which allegiance did you choose for this season?
Pretty sure most of the internet knows which allegiance I chose at this point.
Dredgen Green.
I mean, yeah, I chose Drifter, not surprisingly, partially because of my love of the game mode Gambit, but also because I, as far as lore-wise, tend to agree more with some of his, not necessarily with his methodology and why he's doing it, but more so in the fact that he's still giving you the option to have hope and to hope for other things and to move forward as a guardian in the way that you choose to. He doesn't mind that you have your own thoughts, which granted, there are what is it, Auror, however you, I don't even know how you pronounce it.
Wait, the Warlock?
Anora. Anora.
I think I can't remember if there's an A at the end of it. Oh man.
And I think it's Anora. I don't think there's an A, but
I don't think there is. Anora Mahal.
I just dislike having my ability to choose taken away from me, and it's very much. I also hate it when authority tells me what to do. So that did not sit well with me. So I chose Drifter mainly because of that. But yes.
So you chose to follow the Drifter for hope.
Yeah. Sounds weird.
Which is really funny because the Drifter is Dredgen Hope, which makes the comment that he gives you at the end of the whole thing even better when he talks about how there is no hope. But on the flip side, I chose the Vanguard and the Praxis, mostly, and actually pretty similar to what Green was just saying for Drifter, was very similar to my decision point for them. I agree a lot with the Praxis on how, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, I agree with the Praxics and their approach to protecting the city and humanity. And I actually really liked both sides on how they concluded the Allegiance quest.
Oh,
because both sides came at this, like the Drifters side came at it as a reactionary, don't tell me what to do kind of thing. And Honor and the Vanguard kind of Honor came at it as, she's from the Praxic Order. They view Drifter as a dangerous entity because he's associated with Dredgen. He's associated with the Shadows of Yore, which, we will get into a little bit, but not a lot. There's so many spoilers with the Shadow of Yore.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten yelled at because, oh yeah, by the way, the light bearer list that I mentioned, spoiler alert. Sorry, I should have mentioned that before. Because I'm really bad about keeping information time gated that I don't think is time gated. So, whatever. Spoiler alert, if you go into that list, there's a bit of information about stuff. Anyways, because of the association with Drifter with that kind of the darker aspect of the light and of the Guardians and Risen and all that, the Praxic Order kind of had a bone to pick with him. But at the end of it, what was really cool is watching how the information, as if you're on the Vanguard side, as you uncover more and more information, if you pay attention to what all the lore cards are as you uncover them, you can see this transition from a judge and jury and executioner type approach for Honor into a more, and she's very logical. She's like, okay, this is what's actually going on. This is the truth. This is the facts that are coming in. And as such, she transitions from this attacker into someone who is not necessarily happy with having him around, because she still doesn't agree, kind of like what Green was just saying, doesn't agree with the methods being used, but understands that it is an opposing philosophy that is actually a viable philosophy. And Ikora actually calls this out again in, we'll talk about this next week as well, because Ikora calls it out specifically in Stolen Intelligence, and says that, just because we don't agree with the philosophy doesn't mean that we need to squash it. Now, that's different than, the dangers of a shadow or a guardian who has fallen into the darkness. Drifter is significantly different. And if you have the chance, I would recommend go and read the book Man with No Name, because that does a really good job of kind of explaining why Drifter's a little off kilter. It starts to explain that there's a lot of other components within that process for him, but his entire thing is based around certain events that happened during the Dark Ages, and it's a very, very, very interconnected story as you start uncovering things. It involves Sagoth, it involves the Iron Lords, it involves the death of a child. Aphrodite, he asked Aphrodite to dance and nearly gets a dance with her, which is hilarious. I love that whole thing where he's like, what did you say? Would you like to dance with me? Oh, okay. No. I love that. But yeah, he's like, I really like how they present Drifter as this entire Allegiance quest has made Drifter even more of a three-dimensional character. He is arguably a little bit more sympathetic. He is more like there is an easier way to see where he is coming from. And even though you might not agree with the way he is approaching it, it makes sense. And I like how from a Vanguard, from those who chose Vanguard, as that information gets uncovered and revealed, the decision to exile or to kill Drifter changes. And it becomes one of grudgingly accepting him as part of the tower population. I really appreciate that because, again, Green and I were kind of talking about this before show, is I love having games in which choices are a big deal. But I also love games in which they allow you the freedom to choose multiple times where to go. So what I mean by that is, like, I chose Vanguard this time. if we have another choice in, let's say Season of Opulence, which is the next season, if this starts to be a thing where you have one or two choices a season that kind of impact how the different NPCs react to you, I would like to see the choice made this season not necessarily completely impact the choices that we have available to us next season. Just because my Guardian chose to ally with the Vanguard this season doesn't necessarily mean in another situation that he would do the same. And I think that would be really cool to see. Now, Green, I know, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so please correct me here if I'm wrong, but I know you were saying, the problem there is that sometimes if they overdo that, then your decisions don't seem to have weight to them. Is that an accurate summarization?
It is, and I think that I totally agree with your thing. You're saying that the consequences of our choice now, like, it should not hold so much weight that we cannot change our path necessarily. Like, you should always have the ability to change your path. That's the whole point of playing an RPG, in my opinion, is to have the decision and be able to make those choices. But the consequences of this decision so far only seem to fall into the you don't get all the lore portion of it. And you had the Praxic Order a little miffed at you for a while. And that's if you choose Drifter's side. FYI, right. I don't know if everybody would necessarily know that right off the bat, is if you choose to go with Drifter, you will not get the whole Anor book.
The Warlock Anor, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't get, I think it's the scenes parts. I think you still get all the letters from Anor, but there's 3 scene cards that you get if you choose Vanguard. And those cards are actually really important because they show the transformation that I'm talking about. So even if you did choose, like, even if you chose the Drifter's side, I would recommend going and read them. And we'll probably mention them if we ever get the chance to talk about the Warlock Anor. We're definitely going to read them at that time. But I would recommend, if at the end of the once you've completed the Allegiance quest and everything like that, go back and read the full book, because it really does show you what we're kind of talking about here, is that transformation of a character, which is always amazing to see, is that growth. Now
here's the fun. It's like, here's the fun thing about having those pages missing and not seeing that from a role-playing perspective. Your character has heard Drifter. If you choose Drifter, your character has heard Drifter basically kind of rag on this Warlock for a while, because the Warlock, he basically mentions, hey, I left these letters for you. Well, if you're in the Vanguard side, these letters, these recordings are not listed as recordings necessarily initially. What are they listed as? Bombs from the Vanguard side, Blue?
Yeah, so the transcript, the one, without kind of getting into it too far, basically there's a quest step in which you plant bugs in the annex. And then you go and you basically record everything. And then one of the conversations that you pick up is Drifter is kind of talking in, Drifter speak, if you want to air quote it around there. And he mentions a couple things that sound like he's talking about blowing the tower up, which is that part is what it's like. It's like your intelligence networks, when they have a public public communication, there's keywords that will trigger notifications to be flagged. It's exactly that. That's what it is. There's certain phrases that he says. He's like, we're going to blow this wide open. I can't remember exactly, but it's like, we're going to blow this wide open, and it's going to be a really big, not explosion, but he's like, it's going to blow things open and all this stuff. And it legitimately, if you read it and you're like, okay, I can see where, like, if you're not standing there, and depending on how you say this, it can totally be misread as, oh no, this guy's a terrorist. Like, he is going to blow up the tower if they don't give him, whatever. And so then that leads to not really a confrontation, but a exploration of other things, because then they start thinking, oh no, because he has the derelict. No one knows what's going on the derelict, because no one's really allowed except for the people who play Gambit. And obviously the Praxics are not playing Gambit, and so they're not really welcome there. and the Vanguard's not really playing Gambit. They're not like, no one who's not playing Gambit is not welcome, really. And so they don't know, like, does he have an arsenal of weapons? What is this giant thing that he's drawing behind him? Which, you know, we found out actually today what it is. But, like, you know, like, they don't know any of this stuff. And so when they see that conversation and they have this giant mystery vehicle floating around, they're like, I mean, understandably, they're kind of like, what? Like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But yeah, so, like, I think, again, I just wanted to kind of set aside, because I know it is kind of a hot topic right now with everyone having this allegiance quest going, the choices, like, and I think choices are really a good segue into, you know, this entire lore book, which is a series of letters from Shin to our guardian. And really, it's kind of an opening, if you will, to some really big revelations in a later book. But it does really kind of start setting the stage for those revelations. So there's a lot of foreshadowing. I will do my best to not consciously spoil anything.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little tough.
It is a little tough because it's a little tough, but I will do everything I can to not spoil it. But I will say that there is a lot of foreshadowing in this book. There is a lot of setup in this book that ultimately will make a lot of sense when the big revelation happens. Which if you're reading the lore drops on Ishtar, they are available. It's not like time gated or anything. It's not like Truth to Power or what's the one this season? Is it Dust? That was is it Dust? Or,
I don't.
There's
Dust
another one.
is just fully available. It's the
Asatus one.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that one's also fully available.
Is it? Okay. Or no, it was Warlock of Nor. It was Warlock of Nor.
Yes,
that was the one that. Okay,
Nor.
so the one that just got available. Okay, sorry. So Truth to Power is still the one that's locked out.
Correct.
It's not like that. They are technically available in game. I don't know. I believe that most of them have been already found. If they haven't, I think it's a matter of probably just locating them. It's not been marked as that, so it's not a matter of violating anything like that. I would encourage you to go read it. Ishtar has them all in really good order and format. But basically, this particular book, Letters from a Renegade, what its purpose is that it poses basically an ultimate question for us to consider as guardians, and that question is, who do we claim to be? Who do we hope to be? And more importantly, have we stopped to consider how ripples of that choice, that the consequences of that action, and our answers to those questions, how do they affect those around us? Both, and the reason why Shin is asking this is because this is very important to consider, not just because of what Shin knows is and all that, but also because this is what's going to set our guardian and us apart from the guardians who have fallen on the wayside. This book has six letters. They are an introduction to consequence, for fear of the conquering hero, a fire inside, something new, echoes followed by silence, and a gift and a touch of gray, to kind of give you an idea of where we're kind of heading with that. Green and I had talked about this before, but I think what we're actually going to do is we're going to read each one of these and then kind of just break down a little bit of like our summary of that particular entry. Green, do you want to take the first one, or would you like me to take the first one?
I think I can go ahead and take the first one. The one thing I do want to preface this, though, is that I think we should at least talk about who Shin is before we get into the book. I know we've done episodes on him. We've done episodes on Dwindler's Ridge, but for people who may not know that story as much, it may not be a bad idea to do a quick breakdown of who he is and why we even care about him at this point. Does that seem fair?
That is entirely fair.
So, Shin Malphur is a character from D1 that we never actually saw in game. The only thing that we had was the lore about the story of Dwindler's Ridge, which is the showdown between Dredgen Yor and Shin Malphur. So Shin and Yor, there's a whole history between the two of them going back towards Shin's apprenticeship, essentially, with Jaren Ward. And Shin ends up seeing Jaren killed by Dredgen, or killed by Yor, and then takes up the mantle, takes up the gun that Jaren had, which was the last word, and ends up killing Yor years later after tracking him down. That's the Cliff Notes version. There's a lot more that goes on in that story. There's a lot of heartache and sad. It's a very interesting Western type story, but that is the Cliff Notes of who Shin is. Shin is the man with the golden gun who hunts Dredgens at this point, as far as what we know. He is kind of has almost a vendetta out back as far as like what we know in D1 and the beginning of D2. So that being said, we're going to start in an introduction to Consequence. This is the book from Letters from a Renegade, which is Renegade is one of the titles that Shin takes on as he's hunting the shadows. And this one starts with, "We must each walk our own path, find our own way, every step forward unique to the lives we've led, the choices we've made, yet we're connected, all of us, by choice, by consequence, by random luck, and those steps taken and decisions made. Our individual lives shaped by the person we were, the person we are, the person we claim to be, the person we hope to be. The stages of our singular existence, or so we tell ourselves, lost as we are in our own stories. In truth, there is no I, no singular existence, never will be. You, me, your fire team and friends, your allies and enemies, all lives move with, collide with, other lives, for better or worse, to form the whole of a lifetime. Lifetimes? It took me a long time to understand this. None of us are alone. I call this the first understanding. It's a bit of an inside joke, but I think maybe you get it. In fact, I'm quite certain you do. That's why I'm writing you. That's why now, after a life removed from the bigger picture, I'm risking everything I am on a simple bet that you are different, that you are better than me, than them, than those who would tempt the dark. This is what I need you to understand. Your path is not your own. It is shared. It has an impact. It carries consequence and creates wake, both obvious and unseen. And the path you're currently walking is concerning. For yourself, whether you see it or not. More importantly, for others. For those you may, those you will, influence. Collisions yet to come, new paths unimagined, collateral impacts beyond the narrow view of your own life. Have you ever considered this? I ask not to sway you. You will find your own way. And I will hold off judgment until judgment is necessary. I ask because we are not at our best when considering the fallout of our intentions. Or I ask because we are at our best when considering the fallout of our intentions, good or bad, grand or small. That's all I'm after, here and now. Your consideration of the deeds left behind and deeds yet to come. Who do you claim to be? Who do you hope to be? And how do the ripples of those answers expand to touch the lives around you? Think on your life and your actions, and continue ever forward. I will help where I can, with knowledge gained from a life hunting the very dangers you tempt. And though we'll never meet, our paths crossing at a distance as we each seek to confront all that drives us. From this moment on, our lives will never be the same. My name is Shin Malphur, and I believe you, Guardian, are the hope I was told a lie. Shin. It's definitely an introduction and a call to consider, to reflect, which I think is probably my favorite card in the whole book, honestly, because of that.
I think the other thing to also reiterate on this particular book is that this was the book that was taking place during the Last Word quest.
Yes.
To kind of put it into context of when this was being revealed to us as players, this is where that is happening. It wasn't too long ago, but it was before this recent
lore drop
deluge of information. So it wasn't in the Season of the Drifter. It was actually season before. Excuse me.
Black Armory. Season
yes.
of the Forge.
The ending of the Season of the Forge. So yeah, and I mean, again, this kind of asks the questions. Have you considered collateral impacts of what you are doing? I think he describes it as, how do the ripples of those answers touch the lives around you, both consciously and unconsciously, because it's that idea of it's almost like idea of string theory. Everything is connected, and everything ultimately, there are reasons why things happen in a particular way. And if you're aware of how those things are interacting, then actually you can kind of see the bigger picture. And it's almost on the level of what we talk about when we talk or what we're meaning when we talk about Mara. It's a 50,000 foot view of what's going on. When I do X, what actually happens, not just immediately, but, down the road. It's an interesting concept, not just for the player, or not just for the Guardian in the game, but it's also you can do this also with real life, right? It's a basic philosophy of, thinking about the consequence of your actions. Kind of thinking about, do I need to do this, or is this worth it? Will this hurt someone? All those considerations is kind of what he's talking about. And that's going to kind of be a driving message throughout the entire book here. And he's going to basically in the next few letters, he's going to use that underlying idea of consideration of actions, but he's going to paint it in different lights. He's going to change it, and he's going to change the question to kind of make you start thinking about, for this situation, did you think about what you were doing, or did you just do it? Why did you do this? Was it, he's pushing the Guardians he's pushing the Guardian, I guess, to become more in tune with why they are doing what they're doing, and is it the right thing to do? Not necessarily his opinion of the right thing. It's almost relativistic, but it's why are you doing what you're doing?
Right.
What is your end goal here? What do you hope to be? What are you hoping to bring out of this? And I think it's an interesting question.
It's the don't just mindlessly kill and don't just mindlessly do these things. Consider your actions, consider your consequences.
Yeah. And I mean, and in light of that, I think that kind of is actually a good segue into For Fear of the Conquering Hero.
Mm-hmm.
So for this is the second one, and it says, I knew a man once. Some claim he was a monster, and I agreed for a very long time. Anymore, I refuse to honor him with the power of such labels imply. Monster, beast, others. Terrors meant to frighten, meant to weaken, meant to control. There are no monsters, only the broken and the misunderstood. Still terrifying, sure, but knowable, conquerable, unworthy of the power they possess. This man, clad in black and misshapen by the weight of his sins, professed to wield hope as a weapon, to offer it as a crutch, a beacon he saw as false promise. Nothing dies like hope, he'd say, and was right. The loss of hope stings like no other. But he knew something else, a truth he would not share, a truth muddied by his words and deeds and the grim menace of his presence. And that truth? Hope is eternal. It may fade, it may get lost in the pain and suffering of existence, but it's always there. Somewhere, hidden, maybe, in plain sight or far from view. This man, who craved fear, who inflicted its curse on all he encountered, once conquered the life or death game that would become your training ground. Seeing you and other guardians enforce your will over your fellow champions alike is reminiscent of the ease with which he was said to dispatch his rivals. But you are not his equal. None are. Not Lord Shax, not Commander Zavala, none of his shadows, or the new breed who wear his title like a badge of honor. Dredgen means abyss. It's an ancient tongue, not human, not hive, just forgotten arcana, another layer of uncertainty and fear draped around a to provide comfort against his sins. It means nothing. It is a void, as is his path. And while you enjoy your victories and embrace the competitive fires of the crucible, I would ask you to reflect once more upon yourself. Do you find joy in the challenge, or in the pain you inflict upon your enemies? Do you revel in the thrill of facing your equal in combat and testing the limits of your might? Or do you take pleasure in the breaking of their spirit? Reflect on the answers you find. Seek yourself within the truth of your deeds. Are you a hero or are you a conqueror? One can harness the other, but the opposite is not true. For what it's worth, I see both in you. Shin. So see, I actually like this card. And I think, and so this is kind of going back to that idea of that question, right? What do you claim to be? What are you hoping to be? You know, how are these? He's asking this in light of when we, and he'll even specify this like the next card too in a different manner, but he's approaching it with a very what's usually referred to as a very Socratic method. Like he's asking questions and going around the subject instead of kind of lecturing at you. He is asking you to involve yourself in this conversation. He's asking these questions to explore them with you, to make you answer them, because by answering them, you're engaging into the conversation. You have to engage in the conversation to actually learn from it. And that's the entire point. That's actually really why I have gotten a lot of respect for Shin, is because the approach that is taken in this book is very Socratic. It's very inclusive. It's very educational.
It's a teaching tool.
It is. And it's an amazing application of that teaching tool. This is like this again, by not, he's not taking the Vanguard route of being like, this is what we do. You know, the speaker
Correct.
would do that. He's treating the Guardian as if they are fully capable of making their own choices, which, you know, to be fair, they are completely capable of making their own choices. And he is treating them as if they are capable of making mature decisions. He's treating you like an adult. And
yes,
the problem with that is, guess what? When you're an adult, the decisions you make have consequences.
You can make wrong decisions.
You can make, and that's really ultimately, we're going back to the first one, an introduction to consequence. This idea that you have the right to choose what you want to choose. That is completely within your right. However, you also have the responsibility to take ownership of the consequences of the choice that you make. And that part is the part of being an adult, part of being a grown-up, whatever you want to use. But that's the difficult part. And that's the part that, you know, where you see the comments from Aldrin about the quote unquote godlings who don't have to worry about things. That's what Shin is trying to break us out of the mold of.
The other thing he talks about in this one, and sorry for kind of interrupting.
No, go for it.
Is that it's about intent.
Yes.
There's a lot in this card in particular about what is your intent. Do you find joy in the challenge or in the pain you inflict upon your enemies? So do you just get the thrill of the contest? Or are you actually enjoying inflicting pain? Do you revel in the thrill of facing your equal in combat? Is it friendly competition? Or do you like testing the limits of your might? Are you like trying to essentially crucible yourself, forge yourself into something stronger? Or do you take pleasure in breaking others' spirit? So it's a lot about you're walking the same path. And in this card in particular, he's talking about Yor was a master at the Crucible. He had quite the reign in Crucible, which we learned in D1 with Thorn. And anybody who had Thorn in D1 also had quite the reign in Crucible because it was a slightly overpowered hand cannon at the time. But it was what was your intent? Were you using it as a way to better yourself, or were you using it to inflict as much pain and basically be kind of that jerk emoting and dancing on your enemies and trying to break their spirit as much as just win the fight for the fight's sake? There's so much about Yor in this card too, which is lovely.
I also really, to kind of break the fourth wall a little bit too, I think that this card is really applicable in today with the events of yesterday, because I think it draws the idea of like giving Yor the title of monster, giving Yor the title of, other, all that gave power to him. like ascribing a title to him and giving him what he wanted, which was, fear, gave power to him. And you don't, like, as a person who's living in a world, if you are, surrounded by people like that, that's the last thing, sometimes that's the last thing you want to do. You don't want to give them power. And so that's where I think it's an interesting introduction here, is that Shin is coming forth and saying, look, I believe that too. But what I realized is that by believing that, I gave him more power. Mm-hmm. So I stopped doing that. It's
context for that real quick. Yesterday was the attack in New Zealand.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Yeah.
There just was, giving.
Sorry. I thank you, Green.
Mm-hmm. Just for future listeners.
Yeah, there was. I think last I saw there was like 45 dead. It's a
large number.
It was a big deal, and it's absolutely disgusting, the reasoning why, and it's just not. But I think that seeing this and reading this right now, it really strikes me that this, again, there's things that transcend video games, right?
Yes.
That's one of the joys about doing what we do, is that sometimes the lessons that are in the game for the characters are actually applicable to us as people too. And this is one of those things that I really think is applicable, is that, you don't want to give those who do what these people do the power. And that's what Shin is talking about with Yor. He doesn't want to give Yor power over him to be afraid of him. And so in his way, that is just another battle that he has to wage with himself almost. And so that's where, again, you kind of see the question of, this is part of growing up. This is part of coming to terms with the consequences of your actions, of understanding what it is that makes you do what you want to do, and what is the, where do you find joy? And that's what Green, you were just talking about, like, are you a hero or are you a conqueror? They're very close. They're very close to each other, but one of them can, one can harness the other, but the opposite is not true.
Mm-hmm.
And so, are you a conquering hero or are you a heroic conqueror? That's a question that only you can answer. And that's what Shin is kind of, again, with that Socratic method, just kind of break the mold of just endlessly following orders and think for yourself, which is why I find it so interesting that the number one reason that a lot of people picked Drifter was because, like Green was saying earlier, I don't like being told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just interesting.
Okay. As far as Drifter goes.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm sorry. I couldn't help getting a dig in there.
Yeah. I know. And and I will defend myself. And as far as Drifter goes, Drifter used to be a shadow. It used to be a dread. Yeah. He no longer calls himself that. And we actually saw that in the Vidoc. So that is not a spoiler per se.
Yeah, and that was also the clip that was dropped today, I believe, too, wasn't it?
I think so. The actual in-game.
Because I believe that was attached to the Tier 3 Reckoning.
Yes, it was. But Drifter himself has actually gone through and asked himself some of these questions. And according to his word, which granted I don't trust as far as I could throw him, ironically, he says trust a lot. Like that's one of his new quotes is trust, which is like, I don't, but I know how to keep my friends close and my enemies closer. Kind of thing. Just I don't know. I like I said, I don't agree with his methods all the time, but I disagree more with the lack. Drifter at least talks to you like an adult. I don't like being told and not given any choice. But yes, the new catchphrase "ding" and all the ding dings. Dino in chat. Did you get to see some of the movies of the week?
Movies of the week, yeah. I still think the Cade movie was the best, though.
I didn't see that one.
You shouldn't have accepted that latest update.
Oh God!
You should go watch it. It's amazing.
I need to. I need to watch all of them. There's some really clever ones out there. But
you want to talk about the fire inside?
The fire inside. This is going to be kind of a continuation of him asking what your intent was. And this one is going to, instead of being a hypothetical set of series of questions, this one's going to kind of dig a little deeper into things we've actually done. And so this was card 3, A Fire Inside. How did it feel, hunting the crow, tracking him through the tangled wilds of the reef, hunting the barons one by one, stalking the cutthroats who killed your friend? Was it righteous or pure anger, vengeance driven by lust for justice? I know the feeling. I know the sensation. Loss followed by a hole so big you can't fill it with anything but retribution. I felt that hole twice. First, when everything I'd known was turned to ash. I was just a child then. No way of knowing when or if the pain would end. A man, Jaren, my third father, helped redirect that pain, give me purpose, taught me to hunt, taught me to survive, taught me about vengeance. I felt good, like a fire inside, or so I thought. In truth, the good was just a dulling of the pain, a covering up of the burden of my loss through the redirection of my focus. Why be sad? Why be broken when you can be angry? And so I was, for a long time. After Jaren died, killed by the would-be monster and his weapon of sorrow, I hated him for a good while. I was alone again, lost. I had no direction. I felt abandoned. Just me and the hole left by losing everything I knew. The man who destroyed my life twice over, first the burning of Palamon, my home, then the murder of my mentor and father figure, still walked the wilds, but I was just a young man, angry and frightened. Vengeance and the fire inside me was a weight, not a comfort, because I lacked the confidence needed to see it through. I spent a long time mad, at the murderer who played in the shadows, at Jaren for leaving me, at the world, at myself for being lost, at Jaren's ghost for not believing in me. My anger defined me, as did yours, for a short while. What I wonder is, have you ever considered, Cade's death was not the origin of your recent aggression, but simply a catalyst for its release? That is possible this whole second life of yours has been driven by vengeance for the life you lost before your return as a guardian, for the worlds lost to the great collapse. Are you truly fighting to protect and reclaim, or have you been fighting this whole time to avenge? What are you fighting for now? Does your anger define you? If yes, if no, what are the consequences of either? Honestly, truly ask yourself, what are you fighting for? And can you feel a fire, even a spark, welling up inside of you? This card. So I tried to explain a little bit of the story of Shin and Jaren and Rezalizir / Dredgen Yor. This is kind of a callback to it, this whole card. Shin was a child that was within Palamon, and Palamon was razed to dust, essentially, by Yor. And then Jaren came in and kind of adopted him, taught him a lot of different things, and apparently taught him how to, in some ways, taught him how to hate and how to want vengeance, or at least didn't necessarily temper Shin until Yor killed Jaren Ward, and then Shin had a secondary hole set in, essentially, until Shin went after Yor himself. It's interesting to see him reflect now, because this is written really fairly recently, because it talks about Cade's death, talks about the events of Forsaken, so we know that Shin is around and watching us and contemplating what we're doing. It's interesting to see him really try to reach us, so we don't necessarily fall into some of the same traps that he does. What do you think, Blue?
I'm going to hold my thoughts on this one because I'm trying to remember.
Spoiler?
Well, yes, yes. I'm trying to see if I'm thinking of the right one because I don't want to say something and not have it be something I talk about, because I really don't want to. Oh my gosh, is it in here? All these stories are starting to blend together.
Yeah, that's the problem with reading them all so close. Fun fact, Drifter mentions during the Allegiance quest that Shin is in the EDZ, and he's not supposed to be there.
Well, that relates to the Thorn.
It does relate to the Thorn Quest, which is why we even
also think about what the thorn caused, and it's a hint to where you'll find it. I'll let that one sit with people for a second.
I'm having a hard time thinking what thorn caused. Blue.
I sent you the message. I sent you the message.
Okay.
You have to sift. You have to sift through the ashes.
Right. Oh, that's
there you
funny.
go.
Okay, I gotcha. I was like, wait, I already have it. I knew where it was at, but what is it called? Okay, gotcha. It's salt. It caused a lot of salt.
Oh, you ruined it.
It's not really a ruin.
Yeah,
it's
actually, even knowing that it's at that location, it's still kind of
it's hard to find.
It's a bit of a thing. Is this the book where he talks about why Jaren was unable to kill Yor? Or am I thinking?
No. That's
right.
the Thorn.
So that's
Thorn.
That's what I was actually talking about. So read that book too. I guess
that's later. When we do that book, we'll spoil everything.
The explanation here is like it ties into what gets described with that whole event with regards to why Shin has the title of Man with the Golden Gun.
Yes.
That entire thing is very important with Shin. Shin is arguably the creator of the Golden Gun. Is kind of the assumption that is constantly being told by the other characters here. Is it Honor? Honor, I think, is the one who makes the comment about he is the one who kind of like was first noted as being a crafter of a golden gun. There's scenes with Shin with other characters where he has the golden gun, and his golden gun is very unique.
I don't think, I mean, if you're just literally going to say that it's in that book that we shall not actually go too deep into.
I know, I've tried so hard. It's such it's so cool.
So in the card I just read, A Fire Inside, he kind of alludes to the fact that it's a fire within inside of him. So the anger that he held towards Yor helped him create essentially the golden gun.
Yeah,
Super.
Which is also, if you want to see an even better retelling of this particular showdown, the Ghost Fragments of Thorn and The Last Word from Destiny 1 have an amazing retelling of the showdown. Of the showdown specifically. Like nothing really going on before and after, a little bit before and after, but the showdown itself is paramount in the Ghost Fragments of Thorn and Last Word, and it's really well done.
I'm trying to remember, is it told from the perspective of Shin, or is it told in the perspective of a legend?
It is told from the perspective of Shin as recounting events. He starts it off with, this is mostly true, and then kind of goes on from there, which was kind of a red flag back then too. But it's basically, he kind of goes, his introduction to the entire story with the Ghost Fragment Last Word is that this is his recounting of the tale of Palamon and Jaren Ward, and really it's probably going to be the closest to the truth because no one else who experienced is alive. Mm-hmm. Which is like, okay, well, Shin, now buddy, that doesn't set up a lot of confidence in necessarily what you're talking about. But
it's interesting though.
But yeah, so like in the argument here really is I don't want to say that Shin was the first with the golden gun, because I don't think that's necessarily true, but we do see repeated mentions of him being one of if not the first document. And when you see Shin, when you read of Shin in other stories, his particular manifestation is unique. And it gets a Warlock of Nor has a particularly very cool description of that. But again, yeah, going back here, the way I kind of see this one is where the Fear of Conquering Hero was centered around PvP. A Fire Inside is PvE. It's talking about the campaign of Forsaken.
It's talking about our interaction with Aldrin. did we hunt him? Why did we hunt him? Kind of thing. Which is something I think a lot of Guardians have struggled with. At least I know I have, as far as like I've thought about whether or not my character was doing it just out of justice or retribution or revenge or however you want to.
Yeah, and
to say
there's also the ever-present argument of how did it actually end?
Yeah.
Because,
did Petra pull the trigger?
Right.
Did you pull the trigger? Did you both pull the trigger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's that whole argument too, because to be fair, we don't know which way that went. So I mean that, which I actually, you know, the more as infuriating as it is, and still kind of is for me, I also kind of like it because that allows you to kind of put your own spin on your character. It's because it's your Guardian. You know, you made the choice. So what was the choice?
Right.
You know, and maybe, you know, kind of would be really cool. I don't know if they'll do this, but what would be kind of cool is like down the road, if there was an option to choose, like, was it you or was it Petra?
That would be interesting.
Like retelling, like if you're like retelling it to Banshee or, you know, something, and it's like, it asks you, did you pull the trigger or did Petra? And that choice would be, I think that would be a cool choice item.
That's kind of the thing that I feel about this whole Allegiance quest thing, is that everybody has their reasons for picking what side. Like my reason for picking Drifter is very different than some of my clanmates. Issachel in particular just wants to just wreak havoc because that's Issachel. But
what? No.
Oh man. Lordy Lord. But your own personal opinion about the characters and about what your character chooses and why they choose it. It's a clever bit of writing because it increases immersion. It very much so.
It makes your character you, because it's that thing that, you know, I've said this before. It's that thing that I love about RPGs, is because it starts introducing the idea of like, well, what would you do in this situation? And the cool thing about role-playing is that you can make a choice and it really honestly doesn't have impacts in real life. Like I can choose, I want to go with the Drifter, and I don't have to worry about the political ramifications of the real world in choosing to go with the Drifter, because it allows you to play out different scenarios. That's the beauty of role-playing. And in the same way, I think that that is really a cool feature of all games that do this. But again, I'm actually, now that I'm thinking about that, I think that would be a really cool choice point to
whether or not Petra or you both pull the trigger.
To kind of give players, you know, the option of like, maybe even if we ever encounter Uldren, you know, that would be a point.
Oh,
you know,
what would you choose?
I would choose Petra. I didn't agree. I didn't agree with the entire. I didn't agree with it from the start. I mean, I didn't agree with I didn't have a problem with what was being done necessarily. I had a problem with the way that they presented it as us being pissed off, because I understood, and it's similar to my choice for Vanguard. The reason I chose it is not because I agree with the actions of the Vanguard. It's because of what it stood for. The protection of the city and the protection of humanity is more important than in my personal opinion, in the situation of the last city. You are dealing with the last bit of humanity. Like the importance of the survival of that is paramount. It's one of the
you're Dead Orbit.
It is one of the reasons I am Dead Orbit, because if you look at Dead Orbit, that is exactly what they're obsessed with. I'm just giving you grief. No, I know. It's fair. It's fine. It's one of the biggest misunderstandings about Dead Orbit. But anyways, you know, that is like the big thing. And so for me, and also the Praxic Creed makes a lot of sense to me. And again, going through the quest and seeing the evolution of the Praxics on their point of view, or at least Anora's point of view, also reinforced that, you know, they are truly approaching this from a logical standpoint. They're looking at the facts. They're doing everything that they can to protect humanity in their own way. And I mean, I'm not saying that the Praxics are spotless. You have Ariana, you have Takeo, you know, they all made their own choices that, you know, they had ramifications, especially Ariana. But
even Takeo.
Yeah, even Teiko, we don't really have a lot of bad choices on Teiko's part, but she's not necessarily. Yeah. Anyways, she's not as she doesn't have as spotted of a record as Ariana. Let's just put it that way.
No, not at all.
But we have instances of human, like in human air quote fallacy there. And that's completely fine, but the overall goal is very similar to that of the Dead Orbit, is that, survival of humanity, protection of humanity. And I just, for me, as when I play through my Guardian, when I kind of try to feel like where that would lie, that's kind of where I kind of stand, is that I think that protection of the whole community is really important for this type of world. I think that's very important, which is actually why I didn't agree with the events, the flavor of portrayal that the events in Forsaken took. Is I didn't really necessarily agree with the my Guardian being like pissed off to the point of ignoring everything. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a problem doing what was done. I didn't like the reason that was forced onto my character to do what was done. But I also know plenty of people who were completely the polar opposite. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just that's just. But I would, oh my gosh, I would love to see, like, I don't know. The more I think about that, I think that would be a really cool, like, choice point. And you could, I don't know, like, I'm just thinking in my head, if our Guardian ever interacts with Uldren as a Guardian now, or Crow or whatever title he goes on, like, the interaction, one of the first things that you interact with is like, do you tell him or do you not tell him? And then what do you tell him? There's a couple choices that you can make there. I think that would be
right. That takes us to something new, which sounds like a wedding thing. Sorry, my sister's getting married in like a month. Yep. So Something Blue is going to read something new, and I'm going to go get more coffee while he does so.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. So Something New is the fourth card. It starts off. I've hunted guardians. You know this. I've hunted guardians on the path you now tread. Not the same path, their own, but similar, of a kind. Some have seen the error of their ways sooner than others. I'm not a murderer, but I have, when necessary, dictated a drawing of arms. I prefer the alternative. I prefer less finite measures. But I've found most who choose this life, a life in search of answers mired in shadow, rarely grasp the extent of their actions. Few reflect. Few actually understand. I've seen the damage done by those who would control the uncontrollable. I won't allow it to repeat. To the best of my ability, I will stand against the corruption and challenge all who let the whispers in. Yet here we are. You, a guardian worthy of legend, dancing ever closer to the edge of an abyss. And I, one who stands against those who attempt such a fate. Yet I, for the first time, haven't moved to stop the music. This is something new. That you and I could share these words is something new. There's something in you, something about you. Not just bravery, I've seen that come and go. Not just might. The greatest fools I've ever known have also been the greatest warriors. You're curious, but your curiosity is not a weapon. It's a tool. And somewhere in there, in the merging of courage and might and curiosity, I see something worthy of a risk. So go forth, fight for the light, and challenge the dark. I will be watching with a hopeful heart. But no, should you overreach, should the consequences of the steps you take catch innocence in your wake, should your path veer blindly towards the perversion of your will and the whispers become your truth, I will be there to end it. And you, but you already knew I was going to say that. Understand, this is not a threat. It's just the way of ththings. Shin. I love it.
The hunting. Mm-hmm.
I love it. Like, he's just like, I can't read that and not just be like, it's very John Wayne. Like, just like, he's just like, this is the way it is. It's not personal.
It's just,
it's like, look, dude, if you threaten people, I'm gonna shoot you. Like, it's just the way things are.
Right. What's nice about this, though, is it's another acknowledgement of how our Guardian in particular is different.
Yes.
Part of the thing that I worry about that is our Guardian different because it's hard to say that our Guardian is different because of all these different things that we've done. Because there are other Guardians who have done crazy and other things in general, Anna Bray, but it's the intent in which we're doing it. And the thing is it seems like Shin is trying to, he sees a glimmer of hope of what our intent is. Yes, that was on purpose.
Oh, I know. I know. It's, I mean, like he said right here, you know, he recognizes something that is worthy of a risk. Mm-hmm. He is actively in the same way, and I like this about this book, is in the same way that he is encouraging us to look at ourselves and think about what is driving this. Like, what do I want to bring out of this? How do my actions cause consequences? Like, what are the consequences of those actions? He's doing the same thing for himself. And you can see that in this. And that's what I actually really like about the way that this book was written, is that in the same way that he's applying these questions to you, you kind of get the sense that he is applying these questions to him. He's open to the fact that this is a new experience. These things are not going to be black and white. There is a touch of gray in there. And, you know, that's where, again, we kind of get into this idea that he also kind of admits that this isn't something, he doesn't want to kill Guardians.
No.
Like, he says that. He's like, I prefer the alternative. I prefer less finite measures. But those who walk this path tend to not care. And when they don't care, that's when, you know, he's kind of that, he's kind of the vigilante that's there. And
he's certainly the vigilante.
Right. I mean, like he's which, oh gosh, so many things I want to say.
I know.
I'm sorry.
That's why I'm typing in chat.
I know. I'm like, oh, yeah. So he says here that he prefers to not be, you know, this murdering ghost who's hunting down in the shadows, but the trade-off is that if the shadows are going to cause damage, he's going to nip it in the bud. You know, he's going to curb that. It's like a trolley problem, right? He's like, if he knows that this is what's going to lead into like if he sees another Dredge and Yor coming. Actually, it's not a trolley problem. It's the baby Hitler problem.
There you go.
I mean, like the trolley, I was thinking trolley because it's a bad choice either way, but it's also baby Hitler is also the situation there. But like, regardless, sorry for those who don't know what the baby Hitler problem is. It's the idea that if you had the ability to go back in time to kill Hitler when he was a baby, you know, baby Hitler, would you? And the moral implications of that choice, like, you know, are people predestined? How do you know that it's, you know, like it's a huge philosophical argument in the same vein of the trolley problem. But so Shin here is pretty clearly answering his opinion of that question, because he's saying he would rather kill the Guardian before they do damage and I mean, I see him kind of acknowledging that he's like, look, I don't necessarily want to, but if it sounds like a duck, walks like a duck, acts like a duck, Occam's razor here, guys, it's probably a duck.
It's there's a certain threshold you get to in his mind before he decides to pull the trigger on you.
And I think that, and Green, I know you kind of typed that, but I think that is a valid question, right? I mean, because he says here, he says, you know, I prefer less finite measures, but I have found most who choose this life rarely grasp the extent of their actions. Few reflect, few actually understand. So that, to me, going back to the very first question that he asked, you know, who do you claim to be? Who do you hope to be? How do the ripples of those answers expand to touch the lives around you? I get the feeling that that question is not unique to us. I get the feeling that this is a conversation that, you know, he legitimately tries to have, or at least he's presenting it that way, right? You know, obviously there's a bias here, and, you know, I'll just get that out of the way. There is a bias here. This is Shin talking to us about what's going on, but I get the feeling that the implication here is that, you know, he tries to have these conversations with those who he has, you know, for whatever reason flagged as a threat.
Which is terrifying because that means we're flagged as a threat.
Well, but I mean, he pretty much says that, right? He says,
Right.
I've hunted guardians on the path you now tread.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but at the same time, he also, it says, he I can't remember which book exactly, but he says, your path is not your own. It is shared. It has impact. You know,
Right.
like the path that we walk is both unique and common ground because, and this kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, Green, about what is the intent. You can walk the same path as a person next to you, and one person have an evil intent and one person have a good intent, and they're technically on the same path, but they're not on the same path at the same time. And that's where I think Shin is trying to show, you know, like he's trying to get a feel for where are you? What path are you on? Are you actually on a path to darkness? Or are you walking the path of darkness in order to defend the light against that darkness?
Are you walking the thin edge?
Yeah, I was about to say it's a very razor's sharp edge. But and to be fair though, that's also probably where Shin has in his mind, I get the sense that that's probably where the justification for his strong reaction comes from. Is because when you're walking that thin of a line, the smallest misstep can mean a lot of damage. And you have to have fast reactions because if you're that far along that line, you know, again, by the time you realize something's off, you could potentially be talking about a lot of damage done to people who are innocent. And that's not, and you know, I kind of get the sense that Shin is he very classical vigilante. He kind of internalizes some of this stuff is the feeling I get. And so like if something bad were to happen on his watch, I kind of get the feeling that Shin would be the type of person who would take that as a statement of him, you know, and that's me. That's totally me projecting onto this character. I understand that. But when you talk about vigilantes, that's a very common trope within vigilantes is this idea of protecting something from the badness. You see that with like Batman. You see that with, you know, Punisher, even Deadpool, even in their own ways. These very violent. I mean, Punisher is a great example. Punisher, in his own way, wants to protect people. Right. Now, I also say that knowing full well that Punisher's definition of protecting people is not pretty, and it's not gentle, and it's not necessarily always the best way. Right. But ultimately, the intent is that he went through a lot of grief. He doesn't want people to go through the same stuff that he went through. And so in order to do that, he responds extremely violently because that's all he knows how to do. And I see that very similar in Shin in the way that he has seen the damage done by Dredge and Yor. He knows firsthand the pain that has caused that. And usually people who are the most broken are the people who want to help people prevent that. The person who is hurting the most is usually the one that's trying to make everyone laugh. You know, that makes me think of, you know, Robin Williams. Yeah. And so that's where I kind of see a lot of that psychological stuff going on in Shin. Now, again, that's me projecting a little bit on there, or actually a lot on there. But I think to me, reading this book kind of makes me want to double down on that feeling. Also reading additional books afterwards makes me want to double down on that as well. But
yeah, I can definitely see that. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking also about the Last Word quest because that's when this book was essentially released with Steps of the Last Word, correct?
Yes. So you're interacting with Drifter to purify a potential weapon of sorrow, which then turns into the last word and surprises everybody.
Does it actually turn into the last word, though, or do you just...
You summon the last word.
You summon the last word.
Yeah, so when you go to fight the weapon master of the Hive, I can't remember his name. I want to say Enoch, but it's not Enoch, but it's something like that. It's an E word.
It's similar, yeah.
But he is labeled as the weapon master, or just a... He's a powerful weapon master of the Hive who has he's the one that had the scout rifle looking thorn that everyone kind of lost their mind on.
The proto thorn.
The proto thorn. I think, wasn't that what it was described as? It was proto thorn.
That was the name on it. Yeah.
Okay. So, oh my gosh, there's so much information. Anyways, he is the one who has that weapon. So he's obviously a crafter, a smith of the weapons of sorrow or something equivalent of that. And so the entire thing got basically started off with this unknown package of like hive runes carved all over it. It's got like darkness seeping out of it. A very similar path to creating the thorn from Destiny 1. We have to purify it, we have to sanctify it, we have to infuse it with light, we have to sully our light to infuse it. Like there's all this stuff going on, very shamanistic stuff, by the way. It's very actually really interesting. But the entire process, it culminates with us hunting down a weapons master and killing him, which is the ending quest of, or it's the mini game quest that everyone either loved or hated, with the quick draw feature.
I had a love-hate relationship with that too, yeah.
At
least I didn't have
Thank you, Dino. In-car.
At least it didn't have the bug that you did.
Oh my god. I got to play that mission multiple times. But no, so like and at the end of it, basically you do the mini game in which you draw the last word. Well, at the conclusion of that mini game, you get the actual last word, which it's kind of implied that it's been summoned. And then you get the last letter here, a gift and a touch of gray, which we'll get to here in a second or in a couple minutes.
Yep, we've got echoes first.
Right. So a gift and a touch of gray, Shin kind of confirms that the last word that we have is the last word. It is the actual gun. And I'm trying so hard not to go into spin foil mode on the implications on that.
Yep.
Because there are tons of them.
Yep. I'm just like spamming your chat like with all the spin foil that is all spoilery.
But yeah, so the last word apparently is actually summoned to us, which, you know, take what you will out of that. It is not given to us. It is not taken from anybody. It is actually called to us and it manifests. Chat, what kind of Excalibur stuff is this?
I mean,
don't start me on that particular one because we've had it referred to as a sword. So yeah, so that's where that entire thing is coming from. But I mean, again, I get the feeling that Shin, and that's also, to be fair, that's also kind of what seals the deal between Shin and us.
Yes,
is when that happens, he's like, okay, all right. You know, like you are obviously, it's like the it's the equivalent of like a Mjolnir, right? You've got the weapons chosen.
You are worthy.
You are worthy to pick it up. Like it's you know, you're good. But right now, I get from the something new card, I do definitely get the sense that Shin kind of is saying that he does approach everything or every situation like this. He's like, hey, red flags are raising. What's the deal here? And you know, he's also just kind of honest. He's like, but they tend to not really care. They tend to draw, and you know, when weapons are drawn, he's very Drifter like in that sense. You know, Drifter has the comment about when they're, I think it's from the Ancient Apocalypse armor sets. He talks about how, you know, he told the guys that they were stuck on the ice planet with the monoliths. They drew, one of the guys drew on him, and he said, you know, put it away. If you draw on me again, I'm killing all of you. And he said, you know, that he made a comment about he doesn't often speak plain, but every now and then he does, and they listen. And then that's exactly what happened. Is then the light left, and they were stuck on that planet. And they were all like completely schizo at that point. And they all thought they thought everyone else had betrayed them, and so they all drew on each other. And Drifter was the only one who walked away. So I kind of get a similar vibe between Shin and Drifter for this particular aspect. Is like he doesn't necessarily want to, but he will, and he's also really good at it if he has to.
Right. There are a lot of similarities between those two. A lot of not similarities too. Like they're not the same person. Don't get me wrong. They're not the same person at all. But
no.
I remember how that was a spin foil for a while. I mean, that Drifter was Shin.
So echoes.
Yeah,
going on. I can't respond to that.
I know.
That's a trap.
It's such a trap. All right. Echoes followed by silence. I've done my best to offer myself as a voice of reason as you've continued down this road. I have few facts to offer you, only experience, the truth of my being. But here's another truth. I've told you very little that is new. Every word, every question, each time I've implored you to reflect, I was nudging you down a path you had already chosen. To consider your actions is at the core of you. I have seen it. I have heard it. In the words of your fellow guardians as they recount your feats, your courage, your selflessness. You may tread the razor's edge of damnation, but you are, at your very heart, a just and noble warrior. If I played any hand in expanding your consideration of the people and worlds around you, if I've helped you take better stock of all you are and all you are capable of becoming, so be it. But it was all of it, already inside of you. This isn't a pep talk. This isn't a signal boost for your hero's ego. I'm just saying this because I know you do not know. I know things you do not know from experience. Right now, I imagine you are questioning your true nature. Who is this renegade to define me? My thoughts, my actions. Could be you've been warned about me. Could be maybe you're a little scared. After all, the man with the golden gun doesn't play well with others. I leave all that nonsense to you. But by way of a quick word in defense of my intentions, if they were anything but in your best interest, this conversation would have been had with lead, not words. And it would have been your last. And while you have dark thoughts and are no saint, we are all far from pure. It is not the lack of sin that makes the best of us. It's that the best of us feel the weight of our deeds and do not succumb to the weight to temptation. And I know something you don't know, a secret. The hows and whys don't matter. That's an understanding for another day. But know this. I know.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm reading this and also cringing, knowing what's further down the road. When you are at your lowest, when hope has faded and you're all alone in the world inside your head, when the odds are stacked and despair has taken hold, remember your fire. It's always there. Once sparked, once the anger, once fear has lit the fuse, the flame will remain, always. A beacon signaling to eternity that you are here and you will stand no matter the obstacle. And, in the end, if you so choose, it won't be whispers and shadows that save you. That corruption seeks only to abuse. No. It will be your first loud words and your enemy's last. Don't question the moment. This is my only best advice. Take hold, speak clearly. The echoes followed by silence will tell the tale, and the last word will ever be yours. Shin. There's so much to talk about that we can't. I know, it's just like,
So you were saying that the first one was your favorite card? This is actually this one.
This one's also really good. This one, I like the fact that this one is a acknowledgement of something that he sees within us. Mm-hmm. Not just the inklings of it, but the actual acknowledgement of, I see who you are. I see past the hero, quote unquote, the mask per se. But do you see it? Can you see past your own mask?
Again, it's that Socratic method, teaching a man how to fish, not giving a man a fish, kind of showing you what is going on. And I think the other thing here is I go back to the last word entry actually, which will lead to the next entry, but the flavor text is seriously one of my favorite ones. And it's yours until the last flame dies and all words have been spoken. And that ties into right here is his advice at the end. Take hold, speak clearly. The echoes followed by silence will tell the tale, and the last word will ever be yours. It's that, again, tons of foreshadowing.
Yes.
But this entry really also goes to show, again, this is something that's worth taking out of game. This is something that's worth taking to heart in reality as well. Because
I think...
Go for it.
It was my favorite little mini paragraph in here is the one where you have dark And while
Yes.
you have dark
Yes.
thoughts and are no saint, we are all far from pure. It's not the lack of sin that makes the best of us. It's that the best of us feel the weight of our deeds and do not succumb to the weight to temptation.
Yep.
Best line in the whole card.
Yeah.
By far.
I'm hard pressed to say any of them are, because this entire card I'll be completely honest, I can't read with not getting a shiver. This card really does actually speak to me personally on a number of different levels, for a number of different reasons. And I think that I imagine that is probably not a unique experience. But I think that from what I have experienced in my life, this card has a lot of information that can be taken and used in reality. And it's also, again, this whole theme in this book is the consequence of your actions, making decisions, and understanding that, yeah, again, I said this kind of earlier, yeah, you have the right to make a decision, but you know what comes with that right? The responsibility to deal with the consequences of that decision. And the consequences here that he's describing is the hope, right? It's the hope that he was told was a lie. It's the hope that our guardian, our reflection of self is what sets us apart from those who have come before us, maybe. Now, Ingrid, you kind of mentioned, what is it that sets us? Why is it us that gets set apart? And all that. Those are all valid questions. But at the end of the day, too, the understanding here is that it is that whatever that is, that kernel of difference, that uniqueness, that special spark, as our ghost would love to say, and Dredge and Yor would love to point out that everyone who's special is not special. It's that spark, it's that uniqueness that is what's setting us apart from the others who have come before us on Shadow's Road, who have come down this path, who have fallen away, who have fallen into darkness, and whose Shin has probably been the ones who had ended. He doesn't really mince words. He says right here, it's not for the lack, or it's sorry, what was it? It's if this conversation wasn't in your best interest, it would have been had with lead, not words. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty clear. Like, he's like, nah, the reason I'm still talking to you is because there is hope for you. Because if there wasn't hope for you, I'd already shot you. Like, I mean, it's like there's no really doubt there. And so I really like the fact that, this is setting setting up so much that's not just for us.
Right.
It's for other people. And so, like, redemption is a really big thing. I'm gonna stop talking.
Yep, you need to. We need to move to the last card before you spoil it.
It's such a good. All right, so a gift and a touch of gray. This is the conclusion, and this is the one where I was saying, okay, this is after. So this is after we have summoned the last word. Yes. And so this is where Shin's kind of like, oh, hey, yo, look, Mjolnir chose you. So a gift and a touch of gray. The gun came to you. How does it feel in your grip? Few can light its fire, but any reborn of the light can call its name. That's a secret I'm bound to hold. Just know you've earned it, and you've earned it true. The cannon you hold is yours, but it is no replica. It is a gift from a friend. I've hunted agents of the darkness for longer than I care to recount. From childhood to now, not constant, not always, but anymore it's what defines me. My drive has long been clear. Seek the shadow, and your future is forfeit. Seek the dark, and I will end you. It's not personal. Not anymore, though it surely started that way and stayed as such until one day on a lonely ridge. By now you've heard the story, the ballad of Jaren Ward and his last word, and of Dredge and Yor and Palamon, Durga, Velar, North Channel, of Thalor and Pahanin, of our hunt and Jaren's death, of Dwindler's Ridge and my final showdown with the man who would be a monster. It's a long tale. Nothing I'm interested in revisiting. Not now. Not anymore. Them chapters are old. We're writing a new one, you and I. A final act for me, an unexpected beginning for you. My life has always been about absolutes. There is light, and there is dark. And I've made my purpose to defend against the whispered corruption of the shadow's calling. I've seen no middle ground, though maybe I've always known it exists. I've also seen many heroes tempt that sinister fate, and the dire consequences born of their ignorance, pride, selfishness. I've put many down, more than anyone knows, more than I'll ever confess. Seeing you, watching you, I don't feel I was wrong in my actions, but I now know I was wrong in my core assumption, my core belief. To me, there was only ever white and black, good and evil. In you, I see blinding light. I see a hero among heroes. I see the hope you inspire shining through. But I also see, for the first time, maybe, just maybe, a little bit of gray. And with it, an end to last rites and final words. Shin. I love it.
It's Here's a question, and it's not a spoiler because this card is full of spoilers as well as far as future stuff going on. But the canon you hold is yours, but it's no replica. It's a gift from a friend. That very last line of the first paragraph, it's a gift from a friend, has kind of always thrown me a little bit. If we're summoning it, who's the friend? Because there's no clear indication of who sent, like if it was sent. If we're summoning it ourselves, technically it was not a gift. We called it, unless it's like the Excalibur and there's the Lady of the Lake and somehow spinfoil-y kind of stuff.
I have an answer for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you? Is it not? Is it spoiler? Should we?
The phrase is not the first time we have heard that phrase, and it's also in relation. It kind of okay. So this kind of dovetails into a bit of a spinfoil about the last word. I'll just kind of preface it with that. So I'm going to also say there might unintentionally be a minor spoiler-ish conclusion that you can be drawn from this statement. So if you don't want to listen to that, that's warning. You see this mentioned by Dredgen Yor when after he's killed Jaren, he gives the last word back to Jaren's ghost with the command to give it to Shin as a gift. Right. Now he does. Yeah, give sword, that ties back into the sword comment about last word being Excalibur. Now the interesting thing for me with the allusion to the Excalibur, so Excalibur as a sword was obviously the legendary sword of King Arthur. It's supposedly got the magical properties. One of its properties was that it was annoyingly accurate. Like it was like a freaking magical boomerang, in a way. But the other thing about it was that Excalibur was also related to other weapons. So there were. Oh gosh, I just blanked on its Excalibur. I want to say it was like Excalibur. Oh man, I just completely. They're basically they were crafted from all of the same metal, and I feel terrible that I just completely blanked on that one. But there are two other swords basically. Roland, I think it's Roland had one.
I'll keep looking while you're doing that.
I just blanked. I'm so mad at myself for being on that particular thing. But anyways, so Excalibur it has the same kind of component here. In that sense that like when it gets summoned or called, it will usually show up. At least if it's by its owner, right? It's like if Arthur was able to supposedly summon it to a degree. Of course, Caliburn was another name for Excalibur. Caliburn was the derived from the Welsh name Caldfinch, I think I want to say. But yeah, so it's Caliburn was Caliburn was Excalibur. I want to say it was like Joyeuse, and I want to say Durandal, but I don't think it was Durandal. Durandal was a sword, but I can't remember if Durandal was related to.
Now I have is Marathon in my head. Thank you.
That being said, that is you have Cortana, you have Durandal, you have Joyeuse, you have Excalibur. All of those are connected in a way. Now, there are arguments that, and I see chat's talking about it right now, Caliburn was the sword and the stone, whereas Excalibur was the lady in the lake. So there's arguments that those are different. There's arguments that they're the same. It's sadly, it is actually one of the problems of oral traditions. But so yeah, like, I mean, so basically, you either way, that's both, if they are different swords, they both were, associated with King Arthur. I don't know where I was going. Oh, so like it's the comment of a gift from a friend is also, that's not the first time that we've seen that in relation to the last word, which kind of goes into this whole kind of spin foil of mine about this conflict that's going on between the last word and Thorn, because it starts kind of getting to the point where it's almost as if the weapons are in a battle with each other and we're just wielders. Like we're just the pawns that are wielding them. We're not the actual ones fighting, which is really weird for me to kind of, I know that's a weird concept, but it's like we are the avatars of the weapons in a way. And the reason I keep seeing, and the reason this keeps just coming in my head is because every time we see the last word, Thorn pops up. Every time we see Thorn, the last word pops up. Like it's just, and it's constantly like a yin yang situation. Now, this is just, like I said, this is just my brain kind of going into hyperdrive there, but it would not be the first time that we've seen weapons with sentience. Even in Destiny, we have, weapon, usually it's AI, but I mean, we do have the Eidolon ally, which would eventually become the Necrochasm. That did have technically a sense of sentience to it. We were constantly feeding that weapon. That was a Destiny 1 auto rifle, which was absolutely atrocious. But the entire concept of that evolution of that weapon was us feeding it light, feeding it, kills and all that. And that weapon actually was called out as a friend. Our ghost didn't trust it, but it wanted to be our friend, basically. And so, that weapon did not have an AI. That weapon was very annoyingly found through rare drops by killing Hive. So there is precedence of having a weapon from the Hive that has a degree of sentience. Now, it also goes into what a weapon of sorrow is, which we kind of get confirmation for in future entries with Thorn. And that kind of confirms what one of my theories about what the weapons of sorrow were. But we'll talk about that probably when we get to for every thorn or for every rose a thorn.
So if you're listening to this and the poll is still up, please vote for that so we can get to it sooner, so we don't have to keep dancing around some of this stuff.
Oh yeah, Black Flag says that. Yeah, like the guns are like in this eternal dance with each other. Like I can't help but read like the whole saga as it's not about the Guardians, it's about the guns. And that might,
which is ironic because the guns, the thing that, as far as the history of Thorn, or at least the legend of Thorn, I want to know if the legend of Rezalazir is accurate. And I don't think there's any way for us to exactly know that is 100% how it came to be. With the,
Rose.
What was it called? The bride. Right, Zior. It was Rose, but the
Zior, the unwed.
The bridegroom, so where you kill him, where Rizzle killed him, and then
you killed the knight, and then the knight he grafts onto Rose, and then that's what starts the transformation. And eventually, he continuously grafts trophies of kills onto Rose, and eventually Rose becomes jagged with thorns, and that's kind of the description of Thorn, or that was the description of Thorn's appearance. Now, there is also a bit, when we talk about, when we get to every Rose of Thorn, there's other things that are described about Dredge and Yor that explain how Thorn could be the original Thorn. I don't have a doubt in my mind that is the original Thorn. But the grafting of hive bones onto it is not the only thing that was being grafted into it. And there is a very clear reason why Thorn is as powerful as it is when it was held by Dredge and Yule, and why it's called out as being a shadow of itself when it's held by other people. Like so Thorn arguably was only a part of that particular weapon. It was a weapon set. If Dredge and if Yor was not holding Thorn, that weapon set I kind of see as not being a complete thing. But when they were together, when Thorn and Yor were in sync, that gets explained in For Every Rose of Thorn. That is, that whole background of that reasoning why things happened the way they did with the showdown of Palamon, or the showdown of Dwindler's Ridge, gets explained in that book, and it's actually really cool. I really like the explanation of why Shin walked away and Jaren didn't. Let me put it that way.
Wrestle your
no, because it also explains, because that's what I mean, is it explains why Shin won the gunfight,
right,
and Jaren
did not.
There is a key difference in what was going on there, and that gets explained in that book. And then yes, it also does. I'm both happy and sad that I was kind of sort of correct on the whole gunfight scenario with those two. But I oh my god, yeah, I love the more information we get about this particular series. This is still one of my favorite stories of Destiny.
Yes. I actually am more drawn to this story now that we've gotten actually almost at the end of it, because it's gone more in depth the further we've gone into it, because it's not just the overarching light versus dark, good guy versus bad guy Western story anymore.
Yep. And it's also continuing that tradition of the way it's getting delivered.
Yes.
You know, I really like that. I love the way that they're delivering this particular story, which we've said that before.
Right. You know, it's so hard not to just jump into the spoilers, because dear God, this book, okay, so here's what I would challenge any of our listeners to do. After we go through and do For Every Rose of Thorn, come back and listen to this one, or go and read this book in particular, because you will see so much more. After it's the hindsight is 2020. You will see so much more in this book than what we can describe to you right now, because we're trying to avoid spoiling that next book. Because the next book, there's so much. It's just like, I can't just these lines. I'm just seeing them now, rereading this. It's like, I want to talk about it, but I can't. And it's both a brilliant aspect of the writers and how they wrote this book in particular, because when I first read this book, you get hints, you get inklings, you get that feeling at the back of your neck, just itching that, okay, you kind of see where this is going, but you're not sure because it's never definitive. And there's just enough to make you start believing one thing, but nothing that can be conclusive. And then once you get to the next book and things are cleared up and you go back and read this and it's all just slapping you in the face back and forth so much. Like this card here at the end, and I'm looking at the second sentence of the second paragraph. My drive has long been clear. Seek the shadow and your future is forfeit. Seek the dark and I will end you. It's like, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. You're a jerk. And by a jerk, I may not love you. And that's exactly what I put on Twitter. I both hate and love the writers right now because I see what they've been doing. It's good.
That's what it was. Joyous, Excalibur, and Durandal. Those are the weapon or the swords of power.
That makes more sense.
Because Joyous is joy, Excalibur is like cutting, and then cut steel, and then Durandal I think is defense. I think that. But yeah, so like they're all sibling weapons of power. I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, that's the ones that I was thinking of. Joyous is Joyous and Durandal are mentioned in the Song of Roland and the Chants of Roland, I believe. And then Excalibur is obviously, King Arthur. But yes, your Durandal's got its own like really cool. Durandal means hard. That's what it. So it's like the Joyous is the joy. Excalibur is the attacking, the cut steel, and then Durandal is like the defense and the enduring hard weapon. So yeah, that's the 3 stones of power basically. Yeah, Dino in chat. Tank, DPS, and support.
Yep.
So sorry, I was like, I know that these swords are related. Oh man. Okay. All right. I can close off the chat now.
I was thinking, can we close off the recording so we can talk about all the frickin' spoilers that we can't record?
Let's do a shout out real quick, and then we can chat about the spoilers. To those who are still listening to the audio file, if you want to hear the conversation about the spoilers, we will have this loaded up on YouTube as the unedited behind the scenes version. So just, if you want to hear what we're going to say after the cutting, that is going to be there. So, or if you don't want to listen to it, that's your fair warning not to go listen to it yet.
Right.
So, Green, what shoutouts do you have?
Shoutouts to anybody out there who's a first-time homeowner. Now, shoutouts to the writing team, because the stuff that dropped, in particular this last week, and the design of this quest for Thorn and the design in general that has been coming out, I'm more excited about reading the lore and playing the game than I have been in a while, which granted, I have been pretty steadfast in playing and pretty steadfast in reading my lore, but I've got that itch. I've got that itch again, and it's great to have that itch again and be able to be like, I want to dig through every single one of these books and find out what in the world is going on, because Stolen Intelligences is still driving me a little up the wall. Foreshadowing for next week. Please join us in the live chat so you can hear me rage all next week about this.
Oh man.
Yeah, they've done an amazing job.
They have. I'm really getting back into it. As well. And I mean, again, I know I said this at the beginning, but a big thank you to those who have taken the time to review, the spreadsheet that I put together. I appreciate it. It just helps, make sure that these are accurate. The other thing is, a big shout out to just everyone who is just doing, just being in our chat. That's I know we say that pretty often, but it also helps when we see other people who are just as excited about stuff as we are about these things. So big thank you to you guys taking the time out of your day for either jumping in live chat, live chat right now, or in our Discord server, or even on Twitter. We just really appreciate you guys taking the time to include us in doing something that you're passionate about, because that's more than what we can ask. We really appreciate it. But yeah, with that, we'll just wrap up, and then we'll stay for a bit of an after show. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/focusedfirechat. Links to all our episode archives can also be found at www.focusedfirechat.com. Please be sure to email us at focusedfirechat@gmail.com with any comments or questions for our team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. Also, be sure to check out all the amazing work being featured over on thelorenetwork.com. So until next time, focus your fire, and may your light shine bright.